Have you ever tried to assemble a puzzle? Very important question. Not really, but it's a very good, metaphor or a analogy that I'd like to introduce to you. Um, if you have a puzzle that's made out of 10 pieces, 100 pieces, it's not so complex, it's not so hard. But if you have 1,000, 5,000, 10,000, or even more, it gets very complex. And it takes you a lot of time. It takes you, um, it's harder to assemble. You get pissed more often, it gets on your nerves and you leave it and you come back. But when the end product is done, when you assemble all 10,000 pieces, you have a masterpiece. You have something that's really of value because you put a lot of effort into it, a lot of time, a lot of energy. You got upset a couple of times, you wanted to quit, and so on and so forth. And I think it's very similar with life. We can use a puzzle to represent our life, a puzzle pieces to represent our life. And I think it's a very interesting thing if you think about it, the whole puzzle thing, because majority of the time and majority of the people only play around with a couple of puzzles and they just trying to assemble them, and usually they don't have they're not very satisfied with the result. But I think, and I believe you agree with me, is that the more complex the thing, the harder it is, the more often you quit and you want to say go to hell, I'm not going to deal with this, the greater the reward when you finish it. And it's the same with our life. We want to have a magnificent life. We want to be happy at the end. We want to create a masterpiece of our life. But what's interesting, as I've mentioned, if you were listening carefully, is that you probably wanted to quit a lot more often if you're trying to assemble a big masterpiece or a big number of puzzles into a picture. So if you have only 10 puzzles, if you have 100 puzzles, it's not a problem to assemble them, but it's not so meaningful, or it doesn't bring you so much satisfaction. But if you are able to assemble 10,000 pieces, then it gives you a lot more joy, and it's a lot more complex. But the point that I'm trying to make with this puzzle analogy is that the more complex it is, the more problems you will encounter, the more often you will want to quit. And it's the same with our life. If we want to have a masterpiece of a life, we want to assemble as many pieces as we possibly can into a masterpiece. And the more problems you will encounter throughout your life, throughout the assembling of your masterpiece, the more complex it's going to get, but it will bring a bigger reward at the end of your life. And I think it's worth it. It's more than worth it. The problem is that, we're sometimes so narrow-minded, so short-sighted, that we would prefer to play just with a couple of pieces. And we can, talk about how we go out every day. Do we every day try something new? Do we integrate new experiences in our life? Do we meet new people? Do we, try to change, to evolve, to become better human beings? This is how we expand our, let's say, number of, puzzle pieces. But if we don't do that, our puzzle is very small, and we only play around with a couple of pieces. And it's not so satisfactory at the end of the day, at the end of the month, or at the end of the year, let alone at the end of our life, if you only play with a couple of them. That's why I'd like to, encourage you to think about how complex is your puzzle, how complex is your life, how many things are happening in your life, how many times you are on the verge of quitting something but you don't. How many, how much satisfaction you get from assembling something big and worthwhile compared to something that is just put, together with a couple of pieces. So, yeah, go out and buy a puzzle. No, that's not what I'm trying to say. But I'm really trying to encourage you, especially in these times that we are at the moment, to think about how complex is your puzzle and how can you expand it, and how can you make it a bigger thing. How can you bring out the best of you? So not that the picture is complex and big, but that it's also beautiful. There are so many things that we can work around on a daily basis that will make our puzzle, our life, at the end, when we look back at it, a really magnificent masterpiece. And Yeah, now's the perfect opportunity, since we're all in a quarantine and not supposed to go out, meeting people and stuff like that. But we can read, we can contemplate, we can meditate, we can write. It's really important, and this is how we expand our, let's say, puzzle pieces, and then make a really something that's worthwhile. um, I wish you health. I wish you a positive outlook for the future, and as many new puzzle pieces as possible, so your life will be magnificent.